What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Lucid Daily. And guys, I do apologize. I have been traveling across Europe, so my life has been kind of hectic, but I have sat down and I have finally made my delivery estimates for Q2 and Q3 and Q4 to see exactly where we're going to get in terms of deliveries. We'll talk production estimates. We'll also talk reservation estimates. We'll also talk about a handful of things that I'm looking for on this quarter. So in this video, we'll be mainly focusing on my delivery estimates. And then next video, a day next week, I'm going to go ahead and break down what this could mean for the stock, as well as the share price, and any kind of red flags or good things that we're looking for with Lucid this upcoming quarter. So let's go ahead and get started. So the spreadsheet may seem a little chaotic at first, but I'm going to go ahead and break it down for you guys. So let's go ahead and jump over here to Q1. So this is Q1 2022. We delivered 360 vehicles with a production of 700. We're going to use this metric. It's about 50% of production is what we are currently delivering. So we had 700 production. That gave us around 233 production cars per month. Now those aren't all delivered. We only delivered, like I said, 360 to Q1. Now let's jump to my Q2 prediction. So I'm estimating a 25% increase in production from Q1 to Q2, which is a fairly lofty production estimate, but I do think a 25% increase in production is a fair number. And quite frankly, this is where we need to be at least pacing somewhere in this area. So a 25% increase from Q1, that gives us a production number of 450 vehicles delivered. Sorry, that's not a production number. That gets us into a delivery number. Let me zoom in a little bit closer so you guys can see it. That gets us a delivery number of 450 cars, but we have a production of 900. So judging from the lot, I'm really curious to see, because I know the flyovers are kind of difficult because we have no idea how many cars are coming in or going out on a daily basis. But I'm estimating a 25% increase in delivered cars, which I think is a fairly good percentage increase. So we'll go from 360 delivered to an additional 450, which will put us at a total of 810 vehicles delivered. And remember, we've learned this time and time again. Peter Rawlinson would rather have a nearly perfect car delivered than a good, okay car delivered. So as I've said for multiple quarters now, Lucid will focus on quality of production rather than quantity of production. And if you invest into Lucid, you have to be okay with that metric. So that I have a 25% increase from Q1. Now, I would love to hear you guys' predictions. This is I'm just completely kind of guessing at this point because we have no metrics to go off of. So I'm guessing, but that's my prediction. Now we're going to go ahead and go to Q3, Q4, and full year. We'll go ahead and look at reservation estimates as well as additional things. So we do have to keep in mind that the factory was shut down for 1 week in Q2 of 2022 this year. So we may see a little bit of a difference in Q2 to Q3, or we may see it closer to Q1 numbers, which would be quite difficult. But hopefully that shutdown in Q1 wasn't that big of a deal, and that they'll be able to recuperate that. So here's where things start to get really interesting. I'm saying from their Q2 deliveries, they're going to have a 30% increase. So if they were to do 30% more, that brings us to a production of 585. So we had 450 in Q3. Now they're going to deliver an additional 585. So 30%, which is fairly good. It's a fairly large increase. That percentage is quite fair, I think. That gives us a production of 1,170 cars. Okay, so this is where we're going to start to see the flyovers. It's wow, 1,000 cars is quite a bit. I wonder, that's going to be I know it's really hard to judge off the flyovers, but that's really all that we have. So at that point, we'll have a total of, if you add up Q1, Q2, and this Q3 number, that'll give us a total of 1,395 cars. That's including a 25% increase and then a 30% increase quarter over quarter. So now I'm going to say so the reason that I increased it quite a bit from 25% to 30% is because, as you can see here, my expectations is that Q2 is going to be the bottom of production difficulties, where they the supply chain difficulties, where they're not necessarily they don't have to wait on parts anymore. They have an inflow of parts and supplies, and the carpet and the glass, those problems are primarily fixed. They have a majority. They don't have those errors anymore. So that is, I saw a comment on my last video that said that this last quarter was that, but I really do think that Q2 is going to be the end of those difficulties. So then Q3 30%, and then Q4 we're starting to run at a really good capacity. It's like, all right, now all wheels are turning, like things are good to go. And guys, keep in mind Q4 is like we're already halfway through the year, so like I'm really curious. Like, well, obviously after Q2 comes in, we're gonna learn a lot more, and we can revise these numbers 100%. So Q4, I'm estimating a 45% increase from Q3, which would get us from 585 a quarter to 849 cars delivered a quarter. And again, this is the production number right here, how many cars were actually produced. It's a lot like Rivian, where it looks like they make about 50% more cars than they actually deliver, which is just fine. Like they have an influx of cars, they're just getting them ready. Maybe they're having to wait, but it's possible that we see this number completely shrink, and it's like, oh, like we don't have to have as many cars already. Like if the supply chain issues get solved, we may see this 50% difference kind of shrink. So we'll revise that as we get more data. So at 849 cars per delivered in Q4, these are additional numbers. That's a 45% increase from the Q3 number. That puts us at a total delivery for the year, full year deliveries at 2,224. That from Q1, that changes 517%, which is quite crazy. Again, when you work with smaller numbers, these percentages are often exacerbated. So you kind of take these like large percentages with a grain of salt. But I do think that quarter over quarter percentages are really important to pay attention to. And then just paying attention to every number we can that we get from Lucid. Obviously, Lucid keeps all of their numbers really tight until earnings. Like they don't release their cars delivered like most other EV manufacturers are doing, which I wish they would do, but it's whatever. We can't really change that. So here are the things that I'm watching. After going through these numbers, are they going to revise down? Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, do you think they're going to revise down on numbers, or do you think they're going to keep the 12 to 14,000 deliveries? If they revise down, I hope it's this quarter and they don't do it in Q3 and Q4, because now would be the time to revise down, not later this year, from my opinion. The next thing is this the end of this? Is this the end of the worst of the supply chain issues? Like, are we starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel? Like, can we start to expect maybe 30% is too little? Maybe they go 50% increase from Q2, and then they go an 80% increase from Q3. And then we start to see huge numbers, which I would absolutely love. I'm just like trying to have a steady ramp, because like 25, 30 to 45% increases are all really good. And then the earnings, I forgot to mention in my last video, I told you guys I'd double check on it. The earnings that I have is August 3rd is the earnings date, and I will be covering earnings like the day before, the day of, and then the day after pretty heavily. So consider subscribing if you're not yet. And then something that I want to pay attention to is almost every single company in the S&P 500. And I know Lucid's not in the S&P 500 yet. A lot of companies, almost all companies in the S&P 500 are either lowering costs by layoffs or lowering costs by capital expenditures. What is Lucid doing to make sure that they are not overspending, they're not overhiring and things like that? Obviously, when you're in the ramp phase, this is probably the most difficult thing. If Lucid can survive a recession, they were going to survive as a company. So I'm extremely excited for Q2. And a lot of you guys may hate on these numbers, which it's fine. Like these are just numbers that I just threw. Like I have no evidence of these numbers. These are just guesses. And as soon as we get the Q2 numbers, I'll be happy to revise these numbers up and things like that. So now let's go to so these are my like estimates. Last time we heard they had the estimates for Q2 deliveries at 12,000 to 14,000 cars, which as we saw, if we ramp at the pace that I estimated, then that's way off of that. So I would not be surprised if we revise down, which is not the end of the world. Obviously, like I know it'll make a lot of people unhappy, and so it goes. After that, in Q3, in 2023, at one point, I'd heard the number of 50,000, which would be absolutely insane. And then 2024, I believe I've heard the number of 100,000. And then mid-decade, I think by 2025, they said, I can't remember. I don't want to open my mouth, so I'll double check on that by when they said mid-decade. But I know by mid-decade, they want to have a cheaper car. So now let's go over reservations. Now, these after going through the production numbers, like they have so many reservations, it's kind of crazy. So they had 17,000 reservations in Q3, 25,000 reservations in Q4. My estimate in Q1 was they're going to have 31,250, which would have been a 25% increase, but they actually had 30,000, which I thought was pretty close. And then in Q2, if they have 35,000 reservations, I'm ecstatic, because like after going through these numbers, if they only deliver 2,000, or let's say they double my estimate and they deliver 5,000, then they still have so much demand. It's insane. So I would not be too worried about reservations. I know that was something that I started to think about, But as long as we have more reservations than the previous quarter, if we see this number go down to like 25,000 reservations, then that'll be something we'll have to look at. And then next week, we're going to go ahead and go through what this means in terms of earnings, expenses, net income, and what the EPS and price to earnings will be, and everything like that. So if you guys haven't yet, please consider subscribing because earnings is going to be a ton of fun, and I'm really looking forward to going through it with you guys. Let me know what you think about these numbers down in the comments. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Let's talk. And if you haven't yet, consider subscribing. And if you guys want access to my Discord where you can get my buy sell alerts, or like when I personally buy or sell stocks, there's a link down in the description. And if you just want to chat with me in Discord 24/7, I don't sleep very much, so I'm always available to chat with you guys in Discord. The link is just down below in the description. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and like always, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.